tuning in our little Zoom call. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Colorado Trail and in connection with Wild Connections. I'm a board member on Wild Connections, and I'll tell you more about the organization as we go along. The title of the talk is The Colorado Trail from Waterton, Denver to Monarch Pass. And I'll explain why it's only really the first half as we go along. Just a short introduction of myself. I'm a long distance hiker. I've hiked the long trails, the Appalachian Trail, the Pacific Crest Trail, the Continental Divide Trail, the Colorado Trail 1.5 times. I expect to finish the Colorado Trail for my second time this summer, so I'm looking forward to getting out there again. I know that a number of you all have probably hiked all or part of the Colorado Trail as well, but this should be kind of a fun hour or so for everybody. I hope so. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so one of the reasons we're doing our indoor outings is because during this COVID crisis, we've kind of stopped some of our outdoor activities, of course, wintertime as well, but even last summer, we really had to cut back. So to try to keep folks up to date with what we're doing and some of our projects, we came up with our indoor outings, and this is like our third or fourth one. So this is a map of the Colorado Trail. And of course, up here, if you follow my cursor in the upper right is Denver. Southwest of Denver is Waterton Canyon, where it starts. And it kind of curves around the state along the Continental Divide most of the way, starting about here. And as you go south past Leadville, Buena Vista area, you can either take the Collegiate Peaks West alternate or the East alternate. And then my talk is going to kind of end here with Highway 50, which is Monarch Pass. But I'd like you to also notice on this map that the green shaded areas are wilderness areas. And so the section I'm going to be talking about goes through 4 wilderness areas: Lost Creek Wilderness, Holy Cross Wilderness, Mount Massive, and Collegiate Peaks Wilderness areas. So we'll be talking a little bit more about that and some other designations as we go along. So Allison is our, besides being a board member, she's our GIS expert and expert mapper. And she has prepared some of these maps I'm going to show you, which kind of, I hope will give you a broader understanding of the public lands that are involved and the legacy that we enjoy of our public lands. So first of all, on here is the the Wild Connections boundary, which is the purple line. So Wild Connections was formed 25 years ago, approximately, and is originally and still focused on 2 watersheds: the Arkansas River watershed, which begins up here north of Leadville and flows down past Salida, Canyon City, and out towards Pueblo, and the South Platte River watershed, which starts up in the vicinity of Fairplay, flows south through South Park, and then bends back to the north through the Pike National Forest and ends up in Waterton Canyon and Denver. The other pieces of information on this map is that the green is the Pike National Forest, and the brown or dark olive is a San Isabel National Forest. And both of which, by the way, are administered together by the Forest Service. And then the orange is the BLM Royal Gorge Field Office public lands. And they're focused mostly in the central part of our area, with some up in South Park and actually some scattered throughout our area and even to the east. You might wonder, well, this area down south is not part of those watersheds. Actually, it is. These streams and creeks will flow eventually into the Arkansas River, just out here, well out into the plains. So that's our area, and that's a view of the public lands. You can see the Colorado Trail beginning and traveling through the Pike National Forest. It exits into, I want to say Arapahoe, but it might be White River National Forest, and re-enters into the San Isabel National Forest, and then of course goes on through the additional national forests in the southern part of the state. So this is one of our maps that I'm going to go back for a second, and the next couple of maps really just show the northern half, so we can zoom in a little bit. So once again, here's the Colorado Trail, and it's going through the Lost Creek Wilderness, and it exits, goes out for a little ways out of our geographic region, re-enters over here north of Leadville, and then travels south down to Monarch. By the way, this is the Continental Divide over here. So the other things I want to show on this map is, first of all, the color shading. The dark green shading are those same wilderness areas that we talked about a minute ago. And even some of these extend outside of our area. For instance, this is the Holy Cross Wilderness. Just a small portion of it is in our geographic region. And again, our region is those watersheds. And then the lighter green shading are what we've referred to as recommended wilderness. So in 2006, Wild Connections published a culmination of years of research and planning. They published the Wild Connections Conservation Plan. And one of the biggest, most interesting parts of the plan were mapping all of these areas that have wilderness characteristics under the Wilderness Act. So these light green areas have those wilderness characteristics and could qualify for wilderness under the Act. And one of our goals in Wild Connections is to keep pushing for more of these areas to become official wilderness areas with a capital W. Wilderness study areas like way down south here near Canyon City, those are BLM areas that are have status as having wilderness characteristics, but are not official wilderness yet. One of the bills I'm going to be talking about that just passed the House has a number of these BLM wilderness study areas progressing to official wilderness if it passes Congress this year. And I'll try to talk a little bit more about that as we go along. The gold stars are areas where Wild Connections does on-the-ground restoration projects. And towards the end, I'll talk more about them, but essentially what we oftentimes are asked to do by the Forest Service is to provide volunteer labor to come in and help restore illegal abandoned jeep roads or motorized roads and tracks. Some of our projects are a little different. I'll talk about a different one a little bit later. But oftentimes that's what we do is revegetate those areas so that they'll be returned to their native state. So we have, I don't know, 10 or 12 of those on this map. And we do them every year. If you're interested in helping out, volunteering, keep an eye on the Wild Connections website, which I'll show you later. Another map that Allison did for us, and this is, I'll toggle back and forth, but I want to describe quickly, just briefly, what these other colors mean. So this purple area are areas that have important wildlife habitat values, elk calving or bighorn sheep, winter range, that sort of thing. Just a whole raft of wildlife values that have been identified by Colorado Parks and Wildlife and or the Colorado Natural Heritage Program up at CSU. The polka dot blue ones are connectivity areas. So we have identified where big game and other wildlife need to be able to migrate from place to place. And so those, in our opinion, are important connectivity areas. The core reserves, green polka dot areas, are also important roadless areas that are important for wildlife. I'm going to toggle back. Look at this purple area. So that's recommended wilderness. A lot of these areas have double designations. We're proposing them as wilderness, but they also have important other values that we have identified, and we talk about at length in our conservation plan. And basically, it's our goal to sell that plan as much as possible to the U.S. Forest Service in their upcoming forest plan. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along. So now comes some slides of the hike. And this first slide is of the Lost Creek Wilderness. Probably some of you have hiked it. This is the North Fork of Lost Creek, one of those long meadows, beautiful meadows that the trail passes alongside. It doesn't actually penetrate, deep into this wet meadow. It travels over here on the side. But these type of meadows are excellent moose habitat, elk viewing, and just lots of wildlife values on these parks. We also think they have value as climate refugia. It's part of our climate initiative that I may have a chance to mention a little bit later as we go along. So this is friend Casey getting water along the Colorado Trail, probably out of Lost Creek. This is how backpacking is, and I know a lot of you folks have been there, done that. Have to treat that water too. So here's a grandmother and a grandson that we encountered on the trail. Not your usual backpackers. They're out there with llamas. And we spoke with her briefly, and she said, yeah, I want to take my son out, on the Colorado Trail. And we decided to use llamas, and we've never seen these animals before. They rented them, and, they're just out there doing it. And I thought that was really cool. Here's Casey hugging a very large aspen tree. This is one of the largest ones I've ever seen. It's almost 3 feet in diameter, which is, just really huge for aspens. And I'm a tree hugger too. So again, Casey on the left, Allison and Jim, who's on the call here, good friends, hiked this section with me, and just another beautiful aspen grove before Kenosha Pass on the Colorado Trail. Be great fall aspen viewing. This is Buffalo Creek. It's one of the few water sources in that stretch, that early stretch. And I just like the shimmering reflections on the stream here with the green foliage. So bears aren't really much of a problem in the Colorado Trail, but we like to keep it that way. So at least I always try to protect my food, and that protects the bears, by the way. Bears that get into food become dead bears eventually. Eventually they have to be eliminated by Parks and Wildlife. So here's a bear hang between 2 trees. You can also use a bear can or canister, or what's something called an sack, which is a kind of a sack made out of Kevlar material that's resistant against bears chewing on it. And it's kind of fun to try to hang this. It's a challenge sometimes at the end of a long day. It's usually good for a few laughs. So moving along, this is now west of Kenosha Pass, and this is going over Georgia Pass. And Georgia Pass is about 11,880. And this is in August now. You can see it's a little bit drier. This is Mount, I'll probably mispronounce it. I'm going to call it Mount Guyot. It might be Guyot. I'm sure someone can correct me. And then we're going to descend down the pass and head over towards the Frisco area. So this is the same mountain, different view now, looking from the north, looking to the south at the pass, and we're in the Swan River Valley. And this is the Swan River. Some of the other places I've hiked, this would not be a river. There might not even be a named creek in some places. It's typical of Colorado. So this is also in the same general area along the Swan River, looking towards the 10-mile range, which is coming up for us. And this is a long, narrow range. Breckenridge is off to our left, Frisco's off to our right. And I'm guessing that we crossed probably in this low south. Just a pretty pond along the way. I think this is a little boat that somebody hauled in. So another map, wanted to orient you now again. How do I make that go away? Well, up to the north here is Frisco. Let's see, Colorado 9. Frisco's like up in here, if you can see my cursor. And then Breckenridge is located here. We're going to be exiting on the Colorado Trail, crossing Highway 9 and also the Blue River. And we're going to enter this yellow shaded area. So if you can read that, and it's a little fuzzy, it's called the Proposed 10-Mile North Recreation Management Area. So what's going on is under the Protecting America's Wilderness and Public Lands Act, which includes the CORE Act, which I forget the acronym on that. But these lands, this is in Congress right now, and it's passed the House. And we're hopeful that it could pass the Senate and that all these designations that Colorado senators are supporting, and there's just widespread support throughout the state, not just amongst environmental groups, but against communities throughout the state to preserve a bunch of these types of lands. Here's another yellow shaded area down here south of Breckenridge. And this is the proposed 10-mile south rec management area, which means what it means is no drilling, no mining, no motorized. Okay, so hiking, equestrian, and mountain biking would be allowed. And the green shaded areas are proposed 10-mile wilderness areas. So if the law passes, then those become elevated to wilderness here and here. And then finally, I wanted to mention this shaded area over here. This is called the proposed Camp Hale National Historic Landscapes. So if you've been in Colorado for a while, you're probably familiar with Camp Hale and the 10th Mountain Division of the Army that historically trained the troops in World War II for winter warfare in the Alps. And there were thousands of troops trained here on skis and snowshoes and all sorts of Arctic training. And I'll have some slides of the Camp Hale area. So I'm going to be hiking, the next couple of slides, I'm going to show us going over the 10-mile range past Copper Mountain, which is right here, and then through this area down actually over into here. Kokomo, by the way, is an old ghost town, which is now buried under mine tailings from the Climax mine. But I'm going to take you through Kokomo Pass up in here. So this is a slide showing us climbing over 10-mile pass between peaks 5 and 6. And it gets quite high, it's quite steep. We're going to cross up over in here where my cursor is at about 12,500 feet. So this is the top of that crest looking down on Copper Mountain. And I can remember before Copper Mountain was there. Probably some of you can too. But now there's this massive development. And if you look real carefully over here in the lower left, this is the Colorado Trail. If you see my cursor, and it's crossing through these ski runs, and it continues along this way at the lower part of the ski area. And you can actually drop down in here to Starbucks and get a cup of coffee, which I did. And then we continued on past the ski area, and we're going to head up this drainage. So this is called the Gullar Creek drainage, and it's just a really pretty stream valley heading up to the headwaters. And we passed a guy coming towards us who said, "Watch out, there's a couple bull moose up there near the trail." And of course, bull moose and cow moose can be dangerous if you get past, their personal space. They don't want you within probably 100 yards. And so we were on the lookout, very carefully watching for them, but unfortunately we didn't see them. This is also in the same drainage, just looking back to Beaver Pond and all the willows along this stretch. It's just a really pretty valley, right within short distance of Copper Mountain. So continuing along up in the upper reaches of that drainage is Janet's Cabin. So Janet's Cabin is part of the 10th Mountain Hut system. They have, that organization is a nonprofit that leases these huts on the Forest Service land for backcountry skiing and snowshoeing, and they can also be rented in the summertime. And they're just beautiful, gorgeous huts. They're not hut. The word hut doesn't really describe how beautiful they are inside. And if you've never had a chance to do a hut trip in one of these, you really should try to do it. They're just great fun. So we're going to continue on up over Searles Pass. So Searles Pass is up here, and the trail, I think, might be some of it in here. It's going to continue on up. So we're going to be on the Alpine for the next 4 or 5 miles. I don't have pictures of all of it, but it's a great Alpine traverse. When I was here, when I first did the Colorado Trail many years ago, this stretch between Searles Pass and Kokomo Pass, I hit it early in the morning and saw an elk herd of about 50 or 60 elk. Very cool. So here's something I want to note. The Colorado Trail and the CDT, the Continental Divide Trail, are concurrent for like almost 300 miles. So if you ever want to get a taste of the CDT, go hike the Colorado Trail, hike this section of it. We've come from Searles Pass on the left, and we're going to turn right here, and we're going to head over to Camp Hale. But we're still up on top of this divide, probably well over 12,000 feet. So descending down, just a pretty little aspen glen that I enjoyed photographing. Notice how luxuriant the understory is in there. By the way, I will say that there's been a problem with aspen statewide, going through this sudden aspen decline, sad. And it's probably climate related, maybe a certain amount of insect pests jumping on board to their trauma, but a lot of aspen have been dying. Some of our other forests have similar stress with both climate and insect pests, as I'll talk about a little later. So as you descend down the stream valley, this is Cataract Creek, and there's this great little waterfall just off the trail. And it's like they routed the trail just, right there to take advantage of it. I don't think this was near the trail when I first did it back in, I don't know, 15, 17 years ago. But it makes a great cold shower if you can stand it. This is my friend Ron, and he can stand it. I didn't attempt it. I just kind of sat in the water and did a sponge bath. Long distance hikers will do this. We get into a stream or lake to clean up, wash off the sweat. We never use soap. We don't want to contaminate the watershed or impact the aquatic life with any soap products. Or we're just washing off sweat and getting our clothes clean cleaner at the same time. So I mentioned Camp Hale. So this is down approaching the highway north of Tennessee Pass. And these are the old ammunition bunkers from Camp Hale in World War II. So they apparently stored ammo in here. And you can see this is a lot of bunkers. This was a big operation. Most of Camp Hale has been demolished, but this is still there and the trail goes right by it. And they're starting to put in some interpretive signage as well to let people know more about the history of it. So continuing on past Camp Hale, the trail winds up towards Tennessee Pass. And this was just a little pond with no inflow or outflow. Maybe left over by glaciers is kind of my guess, scraped out. But it's just full of life, plant life, and probably tons of aquatic life. And it was just a really pretty scene surrounded by lodgepole pine. So one more map. I think this is my last one. You've already seen this one. What I want to do here is just show you where on the map we are. So this is Copper Mountain right here where my cursor is moving. So we've headed up that drainage, Gullar Creek, and now we're headed into the Holy Cross Wilderness, which is right here. And you can see that there's lots of recommended wilderness as well as wilderness the rest of the way of this hike. So this is Ron and I entering the Holy Cross Wilderness. And if you don't already know, the Mount of the Holy Cross is in this wilderness. It's just outside of our geographic area, but it's in there. And it's a 14er, over 14,000 feet, just barely. but it's a historic interest because Thomas Moran painted it late in the 1800s. I didn't get the date, but here's a picture of his painting. And this has been shown in the Smithsonian. I think it's been shown in the Denver Art Museum and the Colorado Science, yeah, 1890, thank you. So all sorts of museums around the country. This was just a very famous painting. Get back to where I was. Oops. One moment. So just north of the Holy Cross Wilderness, which by the way, that stretch in the Holy Cross Wilderness is only maybe 12 miles long, but it is a beautiful hike. Strongly recommend it. And you descend down to the Turquoise Lake area. And here's a little side hike in an area of great historical interest. So in about, let me get the dates right. So in 1887, the Colorado Midland Railway built a tunnel through the divide at Hagerman Pass. And to do that, they had to construct these enormous, beautiful trestles. And the train only operated for, like a decade or two. Its elevation was like 11,528 feet and was supposed to be the highest in the US at the time. Now the trestles are gone, but when I was first out here as a kid with my parents many, many years ago, some of this trestle material was still in place. But I think the Forest Service has removed it mostly for safety reasons. But there's still some really interesting artifacts throughout this area. And you can walk up the Hagerman Pass, which is now collapsed. But it basically went across the divide and went over to the Pitkin area. So this is also descending down, I think, from the Holy Cross Wilderness. Just some beautiful subalpine forests. A number of small lakes, lakelets and lakes, just, gorgeous. Cascading streams. So once we crossed the creek here, and I forgot to look up the name of this creek, this feeds into Turquoise Lake, you enter the Mount Massive Wilderness. And the thing about, it's named after Mount Massive, of course, which is the third highest in the state. And it is truly a massive mountain. I didn't include a photo of it, unfortunately, but it has all these shoulders on it. And it is one of the largest mountain masses in the lower 48. It has more acreage or square miles actually above 14,000 feet than any other place in the lower 48. And continuing south just a little ways is the Mount Elbert turnoff. So lots of hikers, day hikers come out into this stretch on the Colorado Trail and they can access either Massive and or Mount Elbert. So those areas kind of receive a lot of traffic. Mount Elbert, of course, is the tallest mountain in the state at 14,440. So past the Mount Elbert turnoff, continuing south, you arrive at the little village of Twin Lakes. And so there's these buildings and a few more. There's a store there, and hikers can either resupply out of the store, or they can have, there's a post office here, and you can mail a food box to yourself, which a lot of hikers will do, because that way you know what food you're getting. You don't have to rely on convenience store food. And that's pretty much what's in here. Although they have a pretty good selection, they do have some freeze-dried food as well. And I think that you can get sandwiches and so forth. And there are a few other little food outlets in this town, like a food truck, and I think some B&Bs that might serve breakfast, possibly dinner. We couldn't get a room there, they were all booked up. But if you plan in advance and you want to take a overnight rest or what we call a 0 day, this is a really cool place to do that. 0 day is a day where you take a full rest day and you're not hiking. So continuing south out of Twin Lakes, you have a big climb over Hope Pass. And they call it that, I think, because you say, I hope I can do it. I hope I can do it. It climbs 3,200 feet in 4 miles. So it's a steep one and a big one of the bigger climbs on the Colorado Trail. And this is my shirt that I took off to let it dry from the sweat. But other people have attached other trinkets up here like prayer flags and so forth. And this is Hope Pass looking to the south. And what we're seeing down there are other 14ers of Mounts Oxford, Belford, and Missouri Mountain. And it's also smoky there. You remember the wildfires of last summer, right? So we're out here in August, and this is about as smoky as it got. I really was concerned that the smoke would interfere with our travel. I have kind of a sensitivity, a respiratory sensitivity to it, but it never got worse than this, fortunately. So descending down through kind of a tattered little aspen grove. And camping, this is now down below Lake Ann, which I'll show you in a minute. I want to take a moment to describe my style of backpacking. I'm an ultralight backpacker. My base weight of my pack weighs about 10 pounds. When I started backpacking as a teenager and a young adult, I would sometimes have a 50-pound pack. And now my pack weighs 10 pounds, not counting food or water. So some of this gear is available. This ultralight gear is available at specialty websites online. You can't buy a tent like this at REI. This is a 2-person tent. It's kind of tight for 2 people, but you can fit 2 people. It has mosquito netting. It's well vented. It's pretty sturdy. I use my hiking poles as poles for the tent, and it weighs 19 ounces. So it's a really light tent. Likewise, my pack, my sleeping bag, my sleeping pad are all also about as light as I can make them. So if anybody's interested who hasn't hiked the trail or wants to know more about long distance hiking, I've done some webinars for the Colorado Mountain Club. I think you can find, or feel free to call me up or email me. I'll give you that information at the end, and we can talk. So this is heading up towards Lake Ann Pass. This is Lake Ann over here. It's a little bit hard to see, but it's a beautiful high alpine lake. Some people actually camp there, but it's not recommended. It's a very fragile environment. We camped, as you notice back here, back in the forest, well below the lake. And the trail then climbs up to the pass, Lake Ann Pass up here. And you can maybe make out there's a little bit of snowfield still left there in mid-August, I think it was when we were there. If you get there in the early season, there's a big cornice here, which is kind of scary to try to cross. So kind of keep that in mind, that if you're out there in June, that could be a difficult snowfield to cross, and probably would want ice axe and at least micro spikes or maybe crampons. So this is also the same lake. Looking back down on it, I thought this was a cool reflection with the mountain ridge and the sun poking over and reflecting into the lake. Beautiful lake. Another view of it from higher up near the top of the pass. Just big mountains, just huge, brawny mountains all over. So now descending back into the subalpine spruce forest. Just, some really nice, some parts of the trail are very easy, moderate hiking. And then some parts like Hope Pass are not. There's a lot of passes on the Colorado Trail. This is my friend Ron taking a moment to take a photo or something as he walked around the corner. The trail descends down or climbs and descends through these stream valleys. And oftentimes we see these big, huge mountain meadows that are full of willows and rushes and streams and beaver ponds and marshes and wetlands, and just really important from an ecological standpoint. Very important that we protect these areas. The trail then gets down into the Texas Creek drainage. And moving up the drainage a little bit, it passes a couple of old cabins, probably miners' cabins. You see the trail goes right between them. Nice place to stop and take a break and enjoy the history a little bit. And then we had to ford Texas Creek. So I've been here 2 or 3 times. And this time was a really easy rock hop across there. Not bad at all. But I've been through here when the water flow was probably at least twice this amount. And just had to kind of slog right through it. I wear trail runners, and I might take my socks off. These are called Dirty Girl gaiters, by the way, if you're wondering. And they keep the pebbles and the sand and dirt out of your shoes. But I'll take off my gaiters and socks and maybe my inserts out of my shoes, put my shoes back on and just slog across and then walk for a little ways. The shoes will dry out and put my socks back. This is just reiterating that the Colorado Trail, this is their logo, and the Continental Divide Trail share the same tread for up to 300 miles. So at this point, we met the Cottonwood Pass, which is a road, a paved road over the divide at 12,126 feet. And some hikers will resupply here, or they'll start here as a trailhead or end here because you can drive vehicles to this point. You might have a friend who's going to resupply you with food and meet you there at a certain date and time. So that happens frequently. So it's a good access point. And then hiking, continuing south, just to show you again the trail logos that we see along the Colorado Trail, sporadically, more so on the Colorado Trail. The CDT used to be really poorly marked, but it's much better marked now. But what I really wanted to say here is this is one of the finest alpine traverses that I know of in Colorado. It goes at least 5 miles along this ridge and along this ridge and up over here, and I think along this ridge, and it just goes for miles. And I have several more pictures coming up. But what you want to do is start early up here. So we got to the top, we camped near the summit of Cottonwood Pass in the forest, but close so that we could get up here by 7 o'clock. And I like to start early. I get up and hiking usually by dawn. So we're here early, and you want to get off this high alpine traverse certainly before midday, because the weather can come in and you're very exposed to lightning up here. And it is a risk and a danger. So you want to try to get this exposed hiking done early in the morning. So you can see another view of that traverse. And continuing along, there's the trail and going up through here, and eventually there's a little bit of climbing and then a little bit of down and more ridge walking, but it's just gorgeous. And by the way, if you're here in July, all this tundra is green with flowers, just profusion of wildflowers all over the place. We were there later, and so there's not as much monsoon rain, but the wildflowers were not as spectacular then. So it's a trade-off. Looking down at some of the valleys along this traverse. So one wildflower, I mean, we did see some, but one that was really, I thought, beautiful this is seep monkey flower, or it's also called yellow monkey flower. And it blooms throughout the summer, unlike a lot of the high alpine flowers. And you can see that it is located in a seep, a crack in the rocks, and here's some moisture down here and moss. So it's getting, flow throughout the summer. This is my friend Ron's tent. It's even lighter than mine, probably a pound or less. One-man tent as opposed to mine is a 2-man. And some of his gear here. We're camping, but this valley behind us is the north of Chalk Creek. So up to the right is Tin Cup Pass, and down to the left is St. Elmo, and down to Mount Princeton Hot Springs, I think. This is sunset, just some cool colors on some dead spruce trees, but I thought the texture and the color was pretty remarkable. And even over here in the woods, you can see this layer of light from the setting sun, very cool. So now we're going to hike up this North Fork of Chalk Creek, and with another pretty long traverse looking down to some beautiful valleys. I'm not sure, I think this is either Quartz Creek or Wildcat Creek, but it's pretty much untrammeled. So another tunnel that I wanted to mention that the trail goes pretty much right past is the Alpine Tunnel. Once again, it's a historic railroad narrow gauge train tunnel built by the South Park and Pacific in 1882. And at that time, they said it was the highest under the divide and supposedly the highest in the world. So it's 11,523 feet. The other one is 11,528 feet. So they both think that they're the highest in the world. But if you're a railroad buff, it's a pretty cool area to check out. So the trail then wanders past the ghost town of Hancock and then past Hancock Lake, which is right here up in the Alpine. My friend Ron's has deployed his silver umbrella for the sun to give him some sun protection. It was starting to get warm in the early afternoon. It's really cool to keep, it makes your body cooler to have that sun protection. So now we're over the pass and we're descending through like this mile-long boulder field. And you can imagine, if you look at the effort, the work that must have gone into building this, they had to move the big rocks and then fill in with all the little stuff. But actually the path is pretty good through here, even though it looks like really rugged hiking. So the trail then descends from there down to the middle fork of the South Arkansas River. I don't have a photo of that, but what I will show for the last couple ones is the Monarch Crest. Once again, this is another long alpine traverse, mostly over 12,000 feet. And so we're standing here. It's going to move. You can see the trail here. You can see it moving on out there and on here and along here and eventually down to the Monarch Pass at Highway 50. If you've been there, you probably saw this sign up there out in the middle of nowhere. It talks about how the Paleo Indians did a game drive and they built these stone walls, some of which are still up there. They're not tall, but there's some remains, some ruins that are still left. And they would try to funnel the animals into these traps. And when they got down to the end of the trap, like a corral, then the hunters would spear them or shoot them with bows and arrows. And back here at the upper end of this, the women and children, I'm told, would haze the animals, the elk, primarily elk and bighorn sheep, and chase them into this trap where they could then be killed. So that's pretty much my story. I have one more little slide I want to share you, and then I'll take any questions that people may have. So this is our website for Wild Connections. This is our homepage. It's wildconnections.org. You can see the URL up there. I encourage you to check it out. You can look at our events calendar. You can look at our projects. These are restoration projects, some of them, they're not all there. The one that we're going to do this coming summer is in Wildcat Canyon. It's a whole story in itself, but there's a history of illegal motorized traffic into Wildcat Canyon. And there's these big metal signs saying, directions to go and that this is authorized, this is a motorized path, and it's not. And the Forest Service is going to, along with our help and our labor, they're going to remove those this summer. And that's been very controversial. We're going to be continuing to work with the Forest Service on protecting Wildcat Canyon. There's a whole bunch of items on our conservation page. I don't want to take the time to go through here other than we're doing a climate change initiative. We're doing a lot with Pike San Isabel National Forest and travel management and eventually forest planning. We've been heavily involved with the BLM Royal Gorge Field Office Management Plan for the last 5 or 6 years. And now with the new administration, there's a chance to salvage what was going to be a disastrous plan. So we're continuing to work on that. So anyway, that's a little sales pitch about Wild Connections. So what I thought I would do now is take any questions that people may have. If I can find the chat box, I'm going to do that. Let me stop sharing. So far, I only have one question. And actually, it only says, I'm happy to answer a question. So since there aren't any questions, why don't you feel free to unmute yourself and feel free to ask questions.
About how many days of hiking was that?
So we did, I did this last summer and late spring and summer. I was out there a couple times. I think we did about 230 miles or so.
Hello.
Oh, I'm sorry, in days. So that's, I try to do 15 to 20 miles a day.
Wow.
So you can figure the math out, but there's no reason you have to do that. That's just, my mode of travel. Most long distance hikers, they want to get from A to B, and they get into really super shape, and they were able to do that kind of mileage. Okay, so let's see. Jim asked, great photos. What kind of camera did you use? Jim knows the answer. I use my iPhone. BC asked, what is your favorite part of the trail you covered tonight? Wow. I really like that traverse from Copper Mountain to Turquoise Lake turnoff through the Holy Cross Wilderness. That was really beautiful. I like the high mountain traverses I talked about. So, yeah. How many food drops did I have? Okay, so I did the first section up to Kenosha Pass in a couple of different hikes. One was a couple days, so I carried my food. The other one was 3 or 4 days and carried our food for that. And then from Kenosha Pass to Monarch, we hiked steadily, and we got resupplied once from my friend at Twin Lakes. Yeah, so I guess 3. Any other questions? Feel free, jump in.
What was the name of that tent that you had, the 19 ouncer?
So that company is called Z-Packs, like the letter Z, and they sell tents and packs and some other gear. And that's called the duplex tent, meaning for 2 people. And so if you want to check them out, they're online, zpacks.com. I recommend them. They've got, I think, some of the best ultralight gear available.
Carl, going back to the Mount Guyot,
Yes.
that's Arnold Henry Guyot. I happen to know because I wrote some articles about him. He was born in Switzerland and came to this country with a PhD and wound up teaching at Princeton and was a prominent geographer and geologist.
Wow, thank you for that. I kind of wondered, what the history was behind that.
Hi,
Hello.
I have a question. Are there any native trout in the lakes and streams?
Yeah, good question. So first of all, I'm not an expert. I do fish. I do fly fish. So the alpine lakes are generally going to have cutthroat trout in them. They are probably well, I'm not sure which subspecies of cutthroat trout they are, but yeah, so you'll find that. The streams in the lower elevations probably have brook trout and maybe some native cutthroat. And the lower lakes might have introduced trout like rainbow and brown. The alpine lakes are mostly pristine cutthroat. By the way, the cutthroat trout statewide are going to be in danger of climate change. And their problem is they can't tolerate the warmer water in the summer. And they can't survive and reproduce. And so, and of course, the flows are going to reduce as the landscape dries and warms. So, yeah, they're going to be a very vulnerable species.
And why does the trail split south of Leadville?
Okay, good question. So initially, when the Colorado Trail was built and designed, it took the eastern side of the collegiate range. And at the same time, the Colorado or the Continental Divide Trail was already in existence, and it had that western trail. And a lot of people on the CT, the Colorado Trail, preferred to hike the western collegiate loop, side of the loop, because it's more scenic and it's more challenging, more beautiful, more wild. And so I think the Colorado Trail then decided, well, let's just adopt that side too. And so both sides, both alternates are part of the Colorado Trail.
That's great. Thank you. Wonderful.
David?
Well, I have a third question.
Sure.
The Camp Hale, did you say Camp Hale?
Yes.
Was that the 10th Mountain Group in World War II?
Yes.
Interesting that they put it there. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, and some of those same people, the same guys went on to basically develop Vail resorts because they had all this skill and knowledge about skiing and backcountry skiing, and Vail
Yep.
was totally undeveloped at the time.
Yep.
And they saw that opportunity.
You're correct. Thank you.
We have time for one or two more questions if anybody else wants to ask.
Carl, it's Allison. I was wondering, do you take a satellite phone with you when you go hiking, either on this trail or on other trails?
No. The price of those has come down. So some people probably carry them, and their weight has come down. I carry my regular phone, which I can sometimes have service. I also carry a personal locator beacon. Mine is called the ACR Rescue Beacon. Other people carry other kinds of devices like the spot device or the, what's that other one? The alarm inReach device, which not only can be used to signal up to the satellites in an emergency, but you can also send text messages or even more. I'm not an expert on those. So that at any given time, you can let your family members or friends know where you are and what kind of condition you're in. Or sometimes you might have a non-emergency need for help. You sprain an ankle and you're gimping along, and instead of finishing in Durango, it's like, can you come and get me on Monarch Pass? So they can be really helpful for something like that.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I guess that's all the questions.
One more. People are sending direct messages to me, so that's why I've been reposting them. But Emily wants to know, how do you charge your cell phone?
Yeah, good question. So some people do buy these solar charges and put them on their backpack. I looked at that, but so I'm an ultralight hiker, right? And I can buy a solar charger for £1 or £1.50, or I can purchase a backup battery for my cell phone that weighs 2 or 3 ounces, which will charge my phone and keep me good for another 3 to 5 days. So that's all I've ever needed in hiking 10,000 miles. Some people who really use their electronics a lot, say for other purposes, maybe they brought a Kindle along, or maybe they've got another camera that they need to charge, or whatever, a music player. We'll bring a larger backup battery because you can get them in different sizes. Mine only weighs 2.5 ounces. It's not much bigger than your middle finger. Any other questions, Allison?
Kathy asked, what's the favorite meal you prepare?
Yeah, so I'll try to be brief on that. And not, so for breakfast, well, I eat a lot. I mean, when you're hiking that many miles day after day, you burn up the excess fat in your body, and your metabolic system just cranks into high gear, and you're burning 5,000 or 6,000 calories a day. So you have to eat a lot. And when I get to town, I really binge eat. But in the morning, when I get up, I'd eat something like oatmeal, instant oatmeal, or granola, like 5:30 in the morning or so. And then I stop for another snack at like 8 o'clock or 8:30, and like a Pop-Tart or a candy bar or some nuts or something. I eat a lot during the lunch period. I'll graze on a lot of different things, dried fruit and chips and maybe peanut butter and crackers and maybe cookies. And I mean, I get to pack a lot of calories into my lunch. Another snack in the afternoon, and then for dinner, I usually would have a freeze-dried dinner. I don't really have a huge favorite. I'm not a foodie person. I like food on the trail as fuel. And I like Snickers bars.
So Christina wonders, did you see a lot of other people on the trail or just those you showed pictures of?
There were a few, there were some people, remember this was COVID, right? Last summer. And we took masks, and whenever we were near anybody passing on the trail, we'd pop on our masks. We kept them like real handy. And, or if we'd stop and talk with somebody, or even occasionally some people camp nearby and we'd visit, we'd wear our masks. Not a lot of people out last summer. I would say for that entire segment, might have passed maybe 100 people. Not that many.
Well, thank you very much, Carl. Really appreciate this. I'm going to stop the recording. So if people want to say things off the record or chat more, go ahead.